Today we're on page 67 in our notebooks. We're going to talk about two-step inequalities. Yesterday we did one step, and so we're just going to add that extra step. So go ahead and pause your video so that you can set up your notebook so that it looks just like mine. Don't forget to fill in your table of contents as well. This is your warm-up. It says solve the equation to determine the value of x. So you don't necessarily have to draw the model. If you want to, you can, but I just need you to write the equation and solve it. This is going to be a two-step equation in case that helps you at all. So you're going to need to use this for examples as well as your practice problems. So don't put it away or anything like that. Your learning goal is to solve equations and inequalities and then represent those solutions for equations and inequalities on a number line. Your language goal is to read symbols for inequalities with meaning. So you need to know what those inequalities actually stand for. So this is your example A, so get your example page out. You're given this inequality, so 3x minus 4 is less than or equal to 23. So I could rewrite this and pretend that the inequality sign isn't there because you know how to solve these two-step equations. So if I use this and come back to the inequality sign when I have to graph it, then I'm able to do that. So first I start with x. What's happening with that x is a multiplication, so times 3. And x times 3 is just 3x. And then I subtract 4, and 3x minus 4 is just 3x minus 4. And that's all equal to 23. So remember I have to do the opposite, so I have to do the opposite of minus 4, which is plus 4. And 23 plus 4 gives me 27. And I have to do the opposite of times 3, which is to divide by 3, and 27 divided by 3 gives me 9. So I know that x is equal to 9. However, I need to put the inequality sign back in my answer. So this is my answer. X is less than or equal to 9, and now I have to plot this on my number line. So first I circle where 9 is. Then I look for this sign, this less than or equal to sign, which is right here. And I know that first my circle needs to be shaded. Remember, anytime you have a line underneath that inequality sign means that I need to shade my circle in. And then if I were to write this off to the side, I can make an arrow out of this and it'll tell me which way to shade. So I know that I need to shade to the left, which is exactly what my chart says. But on your test, you're not going to be able to have the chart, so you're going to have to remember that. Create that arrow, and it'll make it a lot easier for you to remember. Example B, 6x minus 4 is greater than or equal to negative 28. So again, I can rewrite this so that it has an equal sign instead, because you know how to solve these. So first I want to put an x here. What's happening with my x is I'm multiplying that by 6. X times 6 is just 6x. Then I'm subtracting 4 in my equation. Well, 6x minus 4 is just 6x minus 4. And that's all equal to that negative 28. So I've got to look up here and do the opposite of minus 4, which is to add 4. So I have negative 28 plus 4. But remember, if I have two different signs, one's a negative, one's a positive, I actually have to subtract them. So I want to do 28 minus 4, which gives me 24. And then I want to go back and look, well, which one was my bigger number? Well, my bigger number is the negative 28, and so I know that my answer should be negative. So this is negative 24. Then I look, and the opposite of times 6 is to divide by 6. Well, negative 24 divided by 6 is going to give me negative 4. But even though this says x is equal to negative 4, I have to put that inequality sign back in. So x is greater than or equal to negative 4. Then I have to plot this on my number line. Well, I'm looking at my inequality sign. It's greater than or equal to with that line underneath it. So I know that my circle needs to be shaded. And then if I were to write this inequality sign off to the side and I make an arrow out of it, I know that it needs to be shaded to the right. This is example C. Example C says x divided by 2 minus 1 is less than 5. So again, I can rewrite this. X over 2 minus 1 is equal to 5 because we know how to solve these. So first is my variable. Well, that fraction means division, so I know that I'm dividing by 2 here. And x divided by 2 is just x over 2. And then the next step in my equation would be to subtract 1. Well, x over 2 minus 1 is just x over 2 minus 1. And that's all equal to 5. But now I have to look and do the opposite. Well, the opposite of minus 1 is to add 1. And 5 plus 1 is 6. Then I have to do the opposite of dividing by 2, which is to multiply by 2. And 6 times 2 gives me 12. So x is equal to 12, but not exactly, because you remember that I have to put my inequality sign back in. And that's not an equal to inequality, so it's x is less than 12. So I want to circle 12. Well, I'm noticing my inequality sign does not have a line underneath it. It's not less than or equal to, it's just a less than. So I want to leave that an open circle. I only want to shade it in if it has a line underneath the inequality sign, like these do right here. And so then again, I can make an arrow out of my inequality sign. That's my less than inequality, and I make an arrow, and it tells me that I need to be shaded to the left. Alright, example D says negative 3 plus x over 3 is less than negative 4. I want to do a couple of things. The very first thing that I want to do is write this to where the x comes first. So I have x over 3 minus 3 is less than negative 4. That's the first thing I want to do, because you guys are so much more familiar with the x on the very first step in my equation. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to do is rewrite it with the equal sign, because again, you guys are very familiar with the equals. So I want to use this equation that I just rewrote in order for me to fill it in my flowchart. So first I start with x. Well, with my x is happening division, so I want to divide by 3, because fractions always mean division. Well, x divided by 3 is just x over 3. Next is minus 3, and x over 3 minus 3 is just x over 3 minus 3. And that's all equal to negative 4. So I want to do the opposite of minus 3, which is to add 3. Negative 4 plus 3. You remember that these are both different signs. One's a negative, one's a positive. So I actually need to subtract them. So 4 minus 3 gives me 1. Then I look to see what is the bigger number. Well, 4 is the bigger number, and it's a negative, so I know that it's negative 1. Then I have to do the opposite of divide by 3, so I have to multiply by 3. Well, negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. But it's not x is equal to negative 3. Remember, I still have to put that inequality sign in. So it's x is less than negative 3. Now I have to plot this on my number line. So I go to negative 3. Well, I'm looking and I'm seeing that this does not have an equal sign underneath it. It doesn't have that line underneath the inequality sign. So I know it's an open circle. And then if I were to go off to the side again and write that inequality sign, I can make an arrow out of it. And it tells me I need to shade to the left. Feel free to use your chart that's on your notes today, but I'd really like you to practice on your own to see which way your line should go, because that's really important. And again, you're not going to have that cheat sheet on the test. If you'll do these 8 problems on your practice page, don't forget to glue in your notes. You're going to have to fold them in half and glue them in on page 67. If you have questions, raise your hand. Please check your answers in your spreadsheet and ask somebody sitting next to you before you ask me or Ms. Turner.